Isn't it wonderful? So, I've also commented on how this can be a diversion for Russia away from any moves toward Iran. And with the buildup of a naval armada in the Persian Gulf by the United States, it would allow the U.S. or Israel or both to make a move against Iran. And while Russia is being sidetracked with this activity in Georgia, would prevent any type of response from them other than a strong condemnation. Because Iran and Russia over the last couple of years have moved closer and closer together. Russia has given them uranium for their nuclear industry, and so their relations have improved over the years. Now, what does all this mean? It could mean that the grand chessboard designed by Brzezinski and company many years ago is coming to pass. And again, as I've pointed out before, that this is sort of a fait accompli, that Obama is going to become our next president, because this moves us back into the camp of being opposed to Russia. Now, considering that the Cold War was over years ago, the USSR supposedly collapsed, and now we have a new threat, and that is the so-called global terrorism, which is just a big front for never-ending, ceaseless war against a nebulous enemy that you can never find. We need a new, strong enemy in order to rebuild our entire infrastructure of military, spend billions and billions and billions of dollars that we don't have in an effort to save us from an enemy that shouldn't be our fucking enemy. So, I'm not trying to paint Russia here as being a great saint, because the fact of the matter is that Putin has done many things that are questionable and evil themselves towards his own country and towards those that surround him, particularly the Ukraine. So I'm not trying to paint that picture either. We're looking at two very inept and two very evil regimes, that of the United States current administration and Russia itself. Now, if in fact we do move against Iran, or Israel does, or the U.S., Israel combined do, and Russia is being engaged elsewhere, and the dumbed-down American populace is engaged with the spectacle that is the Olympics, it will show that this, in fact, was an exercise, perhaps, in U.S. diversionary tactics. And the end result will be that we'll be trying to effect, quote-unquote, regime change in Iran, while condemning Russia for trying to do the same thing in Georgia. And what will happen to South Osetia? They'll probably be left in the dust, unfortunately, much like we have left the Kurds for so many years in Iraq. So, bottom line, whoever you think is the aggressor, the good guy, the bad guy, doesn't make any difference. The fact of the matter is that there are forces working behind the scenes to bring this to fruition and to make something come out of this. What the end result is, perhaps an attack against Iran, perhaps a provocation of Russia in order to gauge their military strength and their military response time. Someone has pointed out that they have had ample time to look at the United States military and its actions in Iraq and be able to study our response time, and maybe this is a way for us to do the same thing with them in a small-scale environment. And maybe, again, we're trying to look at something like a new Afghanistan to the former USSR, someone constantly itching and poking at the Great Bear until finally we cause something to happen. And I do believe this is a diversionary tactic. I do believe that it is indicative of the end result in the November elections, and that is that we're going to have Obama back in, we're going to have Brzezinski and his crew back in, we're going to have a new quote-unquote Cold War, which may start out as a hot war with the United States forces involved in the Georgia conflict. And this may, in fact, spread. and may turn out to be a very wide conflict indeed. So, I'm not calling anybody good or bad in this, well, except for the evil fucking Satan, his evil majesty, Dick Cheney. And whoever the aggressor is really beside the point. There are moves being made, and this is what's going to happen. These moves being made are for determination, and the end result, whatever it is something that's being planned from the very beginning. And that's where this thing is heading. Whether it gets worse or gets better, only time will tell. Now, the Georgians have tried to get a ceasefire, but the Russians are having none of it. So maybe you want to look at that as being proof that the Russians are the evil aggressors going beyond what they supposedly were going to do in helping South Oseetia, or you can look at it some other way. But there are grander designs going on here than just this so-called breakaway Republic of South Oseetia and this province of Georgia. Look more closely at things that are going on around the world, and you will see a plan. And that plan is unfolding, even as we speak. Thank you. Good night.